All right, we're going to start with Chapter 5 in Dettmer, where they're discussing different strategies that we can use in order to collaborate and consult with one another. I think very often in our school setting, with working with the same individuals, professionals in the school, and then different families, we often fall into a particular style of consulting or working on IEPs or planning a behavior plan, for example. And so this chapter helps us think a little bit outside of our own box and think about some other things that we might try. I'm sure you've seen a link for a TED Talk included in this module that you may have seen before. It's quite well known, but it talks about yet another way to work as a group to think about problem solving. And if we look at designing solutions for students, strategies, programs as solving a problem. We're not attaching the problem to the student, but we're saying we can use those strategies to come up with good plans to try and see if we can't improve their skills in a certain area. So I want you to enjoy that TED Talk if you've not seen it before, and think about that method as well this week. No matter what problem you're trying to solve across any particular discipline, we all know the typical things that we do, and it almost looks a little like the scientific method. We've got to have data to look at, and we have to make sure we all are on the same page about exactly what the problem is before we can possibly generate some different types of possible solutions. Think about those really in a critical way. Decide upon the best ones to start with. Get a plan going and implement it and follow through with it. So that's just standard problem-solving process across all sorts of disciplines. If you look in your text on page 121 at figure 5.2, there's kind of a daunting little drawing of all of the places we can get data from with regard to a student. And so it kind of emphasizes to us how complicated our students' lives are, all of our lives are, but all of the places where influences could be occurring that would impact what we're really looking at as a need that we want to help meet in some way. So, for example, here, a couple of the things that are noted there are information from any counselors. It could be in or outside of school counselors, in the community, the programs that the students are involved in there. The teachers themselves, past referrals, current referrals, what are teachers seeing, obviously. The special ed data, as special educators, we've been progress monitoring forever. Now most everyone's doing it, hopefully, but we should have lots of data. And then there are times, believe it or not, when standardized tests can be useful if they're the right tests that give us information that's really pertinent to what we're looking at. Just to clarify the difference between consultation and collaboration, and I'm sure it's no surprise to anyone, but when we use those terms sometimes interchangeably, we really are talking about two slightly different things for sure, which in the case of consultation, it's typically an individual consultant who's providing their expertise to help other folks with a particular question, versus collaboration, where the entire group of individuals that brings, a multitude of expertise works together to try to integrate a solution and to address a problem in a more holistic way, probably because, there's several things you're looking at, or it's a more overreaching kind of issue. And then finally, with teamwork, just by the essence of the word, there's an implied notion that we're sharing responsibilities. And we all know that we've been on teams that weren't really teams, where, only a couple or a single person seemed to carry the load. This goes all the way back to group work in classrooms, where students complain that they don't enjoy it because of the inequity of responsibility taken. So if we're really going to do teamwork, we really want to be a team, and that takes work initially. So I'm sure you've got lots of experience to share with all of us about how successful that may or may not be. If we apply problem solving specifically to our issues in education, in meeting the needs of students with special concerns, then we look at these more refined points of how do we get ready to do this. It takes some preparation before the meetings, how we initiate the whole process, what information we choose together, how we do isolate that problem. Getting options that we know are feasible and reasonable in school. We all know that we've seen reports from folks outside of school saying, why don't you try this? And the moment a school person sees it, they know that's just not going to fit this environment. So having realistic options so that we can formulate our plans. Always being prepared from the start to evaluate the whole process from the beginning. Follow up and see, do we need to go back and start over with our problem solving or begin again because it's not working, or what is the next step? If that is successful, what's the next skill that we need to think about for that particular student? Different tools, and this fits in with the TED Talk as well. And we teach some of these things to our students, particularly older students, how to brainstorm, how to use concept maps. Lots of folks are visual, not just many of our students who struggle are very visual learners, but I am, and many people are very visual. So just the use of concept mapping that's not over the top, or like with the TED Talk, use of sticky notes everywhere, whatever it takes to try to facilitate the process. We should try. We need to use all sorts of tactics. They talk about synthetics and metaphors in the textbook, using that kind of a tool. They use the fancy word Januszian thinking, and they're referring to the Greek god Janus, believe it or not, because the thought is you look back and you look forward. You have really opposing views, perhaps, or opposing situations where this is where we are, but this is where we want to be, which is very different. And through looking at those opposing opposites, to be redundant, you try to figure out, okay, so where is there something brand new in the middle that will work? So it's not just a pros and cons and settling for the less con. It's looking at, okay, these are really divergent things that we have to think about happening, and what we want is something completely different. So how do we get there? There's more techniques as well in the text on page 146. The book also discusses lots of hurdles and tips, so I encourage you to look at those things. And even though you've probably done a lot of consultation, sometimes it's good to go back and think about other ways it can happen.